Welcome into the latest edition of the Zoneheads podcast. Your host, Brandon Kravitz, here. This episode presented by Kevin Crager with LPT Realty. When it comes to real estate, experience matters. Trust Kevin Crager to guide you every step of the way. Call him at 407-702-4635. You can follow me at Brandon Kravitz on social at Zoneheads for all of the latest and greatest sports content. Appreciate you stopping in today. What a weekend it was. We are off the air for 96.9 The Game today because of the Labor Day holiday, but just had to pop on to discuss everything that we saw this weekend, from FSU to Miami to Arch Manning. What the hell was that? Got tidbits on all of it. But first, come on. How emotional was that Lee Corso episode of College Game Day? I'm not much of a crier, but he got me. That Brutus head at the end of the episode, his relationship with Kirk Herbstreit, it's remarkable. What a career this guy has had. What a guy. I mean, he lives right here in our backyard in Orlando, Florida. He lives in the Lake Mary area. He might even be a zone head for all we know. He has meant so much to this sport, so much to college football. I don't think they were overstating it on that broadcast by saying that college football today is as popular as it is, partly because of Lee Corso. He has brought in so many casual viewers that just feel the heart that is behind the broadcast desk of ESPN and their lead up to college football. There's no replicating it. We're never going to see anything like it again. I still think they're going to do a phenomenal job. Lee Corso has been on and off game day for the last couple of years because of his age and travel restrictions and things like that. And it's still a great pregame show, but come on, like, it's just not going to be the same. That tune in at 11:55 to see what happens as far as a prediction that, face it, nobody actually cares. Nobody's shifting their betting perspective based on what Lee Corso does. There's a charm to it. There's a ritual to it, and something that can't be replicated. Certainly not going to be replicated by the Pat McAfees of the world. It's not going to be replicated on the other network with Dave Portnoy, the frat boy, doing whatever he does for them. So it's the end of an era. And for him to go out on top the way that he did, he went 6-0 in his biggest games. So remarkable record for Lee Corso. I have it here. He had Tennessee over Syracuse. Tennessee was favored. Okay, so it's not that crazy. How about Florida State over Alabama? And Lee Corso's an FSU guy, but still, to put it out there last day, pretty impressive. He had South Carolina over Virginia Tech, Miami over Notre Dame, Miami also an underdog, LSU over Clemson, LSU a road dog at Clemson, and Ohio State, with the world felt like they were picking Texas. I certainly did. He picked Ohio State. So he went 6-0 in those games, the biggest games of the weekend, and a great way to send off an absolute legend. Now, I, on the other hand, did not do well. This was a terrible betting weekend for me. The Stone Cold locks that I gave out on 96.9 The Game, on Game On, 0-3. As for the picks that were on zoneheadsmedia.com, for whatever it was, 4 or 5 games that I had on there, could not have gone worse. The perspective that I gained from it, because I try and be ultimately a positive person, and one of the things that I've learned, certainly about betting sports as often as I do throughout the course of the year. I mean, it's not like I just dove back into this. I've been betting baseball for the last couple of months. Is that you're going to ride waves. You're going to ride the roller coasters of hot days, cold weekends. The opening weekend of the college football season reminds me so much of the opening round of March Madness, in the way that you're so excited for it to be on. You're consuming the product all day. And if we're being honest with ourselves, that first round of March Madness in this first weekend of the college football season is when we know the absolute least about all of these teams. For college basketball, most of us have not been watching college basketball all year. And even if you have, the unpredictability that March Madness just has within its format of the one and done nature and these these teams that come from absolutely who's watching Montana basketball. Even if you're a college basketball fan, you're consuming Big 12, ACC, Big 10. So even the most hardcore college basketball fan is taken by surprise on the opening round of March Madness. Then you get to the second round. Okay, now you've actually watched these teams. You can see where there would be overreactions in the market based on an underdog winning or a favorite winning by 20 points. So you're really just diving into the action head first without true knowledge. I don't care if you can name the entire offensive line of Ohio State. You don't know anything until after the first week of college football is played. A lot of these teams are bringing in 30 new players. You have no idea how it's going to mesh. Look at somebody like Carson Beck with Miami. Carson Beck was terrible last year with Georgia. He'd been a good college quarterback, but did you know that he was going to come out there and be uber efficient with the Miami Hurricanes going up against one of the better defenses in college football at Notre Dame? You did not. Maybe you were on Miami, but you couldn't know this. And so there's so much unpredictability to week one. I put way too much weight into preseason power ratings or the write-ups in an Athlon college football magazine. I think the thing that I'm going to take with me after a very unsuccessful week one, because week one's for me also typically not great, is I would just first of all, be very selective. Pick a couple of games, maybe bet 4 games, stagger it throughout the day, 12, 3:30, night games, standalone on Thursday, whatever it is. Unders are going to be king, and I love taking a good under. Wasn't really on one until Miami and Notre Dame, and then that one went over. So this is the kind of weekend that I had. Select games, and then look for underdogs that are undervalued in your opinion, or favorites that are overvalued. So a good example of that would be Notre Dame and Miami. Okay, we don't know anything going into the season. So shouldn't that game between Notre Dame and Miami, two teams that are projected to be top 10 in terms of the rosters that they have, total guess, but an educated guess that these two teams are going to be pretty good. Why is Notre Dame a 2.5-point road favorite? So in this scenario, back the dog. For Florida State, Alabama, I understand this is total hindsight 2020 kind of stuff here, but Alabama's ushering in a new starting quarterback. They bring in a bunch of transfers. FSU had to overhaul their entire roster because it stunk last year. How do you know that FSU should be a 2-touchdown underdog against an Alabama team other than what you have from the stink of last year? This isn't, you can put that sort of blind faith 2-touchdown favorite into legendary coaching. Nick Saban, as Tommy Castellanos pointed out prior to the game, was not on the sideline for Alabama. So just blindly backing the dog. I'm not even saying taking the money line. I mean, you can throw a sprinkle on there. I have the old 80-20 rule that I use for myself. If I'm taking a big underdog, anything more than 4 points, 80% of the bet is on the side, 20% of the bet is on the money line. That is exactly the kind of game to do it. And I wish that this is something that I had really thought of prior to this weekend, but got the old trusty notebook right here. So we are going to start tracking these sort of ideas. But I think week one of college football is a good time to implement all of that. Now, as for the Arch Manning, Texas side of this, the Texas-Ohio State game, line movement wise, I still feel like I'm not beating myself up too much, because if you look at where I sat in terms of these lines and then where they wrapped, I was ahead of the move, which is whether you're betting NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL, college football, that's exactly where you want to be. So I feel good about getting in on the action early and being on the right side of the movement. I just think I wasn't taking into account enough the unpredictability that you have in the first week of college football. Now, as for the product itself, go back to this Arch Manning thing. That Texas offense, I feel like Steve Sarkisian did this kid no favors whatsoever. super vanilla on offense. It felt like they were babying Arch Manning. And don't get me wrong, Arch was rough around the edges by himself, but I don't think Texas did him any favors. It felt like they were coddling him in this game, which is how I felt last year. They could have done so much more having Arch Manning there as a backup quarterback to create packages for him, maybe even give him a start or a few starts against lesser competition. It just felt like they didn't want to rush it with Arch, and going into Ohio State. Okay, you've got to let the training wheels off. If this guy's a star quarterback, you're going to need a star quarterback to beat Ohio State. They have the best defensive player in the country in Caleb Downs. And the secondary, you've got Matt Patricia, a former Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator that's going up against you. You're not going to be able to vanilla this thing to a win at Ohio State. This stat I think it perfectly encapsulates how Arch himself was also held back by his own play. So I think the play calling was lame. You get down to the goal line and you call the most obvious quarterback sneak on a 4th down. Everybody in the world saw that coming. But Arch didn't do himself any favors. 37% off-target percentage in this game. He was 11 of 30 in terms of off-target throws. So he was bad also. And he was given those opportunities for layups. He would miss layups also. Dan Orlovsky tweeted out from ESPN, imagine having a generational talent at quarterback and having the training wheels on all game. I think it's still very much debatable as to whether or not he's generational in terms of his talent. He's generational in terms of his name, and he's got wheels. I mean, he's definitely got some talent. I think he can hit a deep ball and he can run, but the simple stuff, the intermediate, I did not see it. And this was our first real look at Arch. You don't want to overreact to it. That Ohio State defense is real. This is the defending national champion. They were at home. It should not surprise anybody. I mean, Texas was an underdog in this game, and they lost. So they lost by 1 score in a game where their offensive game plan was don't F up. So those are just not games that you're going to win. But with everyone in the world watching, Arch Manning was not very good. Now, as for Florida State, good job. Unbelievable performance against Alabama this weekend. I was absolutely blown away. You can see it very early on, and I was a little hesitant to believe it, but I think we all saw the punch in the mouth early in this game. The running backs look different. The offensive line looked different. Tommy Castellanos is so confident. 16 carries, 78 yards on the ground. And remember, in college football, lost yards on sacks count against you. And this guy still had 78 yards rushing. 31-17 was the final score. Gus Malzahn came from UCF, and UCF fans could not stand this guy and all of his wonky play calling. Situationally, the guy was just an absolute mess. I think decision-making in terms of the quarterback position is perhaps the thing that drove fans most crazy. And part of that was that Tommy Castellanos came from UCF. He was in the building, and Gus Malzahn chose to bring in John Rice Plumlee ahead of him when he could have been doing this at UCF all along. So if you're a frustrated UCF fan today, you've got every right to be exactly that. But we saw all this misdirection and motion throughout the Alabama win. Castellanos is a star who put his money where his mouth is. This is a guy who said, Nick Saban's not going to save you. This is not the same Alabama team. And the truth is, he was 100% right. Alabama does not look the same without Nick Saban. I was willing to give them a grace period last year, trying to fill the shoes of Nick Saban in year 1 for Caleb DeBoer. That was an impossible feat for anybody. Bill Belichick could have taken over for him. That was going to be impossible to fill those shoes in year 1. But you've now had an entire offseason. You've had a whole season to get your system and your structure and your standard in place. Little mistakes, mental mistakes, the sloppiness, the penalties, the turnovers, all of these things that are so uncharacteristic of Alabama football. They're going to try and run this guy off about midway through the season. That logo that used to hold up, kind of like the Patriots did in the NFL, that held up a certain standard of play. Like, we are not going to beat ourselves. You're going to have to beat us. It's gone. It is absolutely gone. And I'm going to predict something here. I think it's so gone that something we saw at the end of this game from Florida State fans, which I don't blame them. I'm not a field stormer myself. You're never going to catch me out there. But FSU became the 11th straight school to rush the field after beating Alabama. I think they're going to be the last. It's just not. It's not the feat that it used to be. Vanderbilt did it last year. FSU did it this year, and FSU made it look easy. That was a domination. Like, if Alabama was never really in this game, at least they never had control of the game. And the standard to me is just, I think it's gone. So at the next team that beats Alabama outside of an SEC school, I don't think they should rush the field. I don't think it's impressive anymore. I think I don't blame FSU. I think FSU was like that game was the punctuation on the end of the Nick Saban era. In terms of the Big 12, they'd had a phenomenal weekend. I saw this tweet out there. The Big 12 conference went 8-0, winning by an average of 38.5 points on Saturday. Now, Thursday and Friday, not as good for the Big 12, but there's some really good football teams in this conference. I'm recording this ahead of TCU, North Carolina. Very curious to see what the Horned Frogs do against Bill Belichick in his first coaching appearance. If you happen to catch this before kickoff, I am on TCU minus the 3.5. I've been colder than a witch's tit so far in this weekend. So if you want to bet against that, by all means, it's probably the right way to go. But you had teams like, let's see, Texas Tech, 67 points on it's Arkansas Pine Bluff. What the hell is that? Utah, though, this was an impressive win because I saw a lot of sharp money coming in on UCLA, and Utah put a thumping on them, 43-10. They have a really good quarterback in Devin Dampier, who's a transfer that came over from New Mexico. So Utah, serious football team. BYU put up 69 points with their new quarterback on Portland State. West Virginia put up 45. So, I mean, a lot of these teams didn't play anybody of note, but I think it is a display of just how good this conference is. And we have seen some updated odds. Take a sip of water here. In terms of the Heisman market, Garrett Nussmeier now the favorite to win. I mean, there's no way Garrett Nussmeier wins the Heisman Trophy award. His stat line was average. It was a big win. I think he is, to call him a game manager, it would be too much of a slight, but I don't think he's sensational. I think he's an experienced college quarterback who gets the job done. 28 of 38 for 230 yards and a touchdown. I mean, come on. That's not Heisman Trophy stuff. He is going to have the favorite tag snatched from him in no time. Lenore Sellers is plus 900. He's number 2 right now on the list. Big win against Virginia Tech, neutral site, but didn't do anything overly sensational. They only put up 24 points in that game, so it's not like he's got a firm hold there at the top. He's the type of player, because of his dual threat ability, that's going to end up winning this award. Carson Beck is 12-1. I was really impressed with what I saw from Carson Beck and the Miami Hurricanes, and perhaps that's where we should turn next. Gunnar Stockton's in there. Somehow Arch Manning is still 16-1. Do not place $1 on that guy. He lost that. John Mateer of Oklahoma, 16-1. He's got an opportunity against Michigan, one of the biggest games coming up in the second weekend of the college football season, Oklahoma and Michigan. I found it telling that broadcasters mentioned that Carson Beck wasn't allowed any freedom in the Georgia offense. This is a completely different world for him now. All he could do when he was at Georgia, in terms of checking, audibling at the line, he could check from one run to a different run, which sounds very believable. That sounds very Kirby Smart, Georgia football like. He looked like a completely different player. I mean, just even in the way that he was taking a snap and spinning the ball before delivering it to his wide receivers. The offensive line, which you're always going to get from a Mario Cristobal team, was tough. The running backs were not easily tackled. They had bruising backs that were punishing the Notre Dame defense. And I thought defensively, Notre Dame is going to be a really good offense this year. CJ Carr, first start for a freshman. I think he's going to be sensational. Jeremiah Love is a top 2 running back in college football, probably the best. Nick Singleton of Penn State's great as well, but he's right up there. Could be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. That's going to be a really good offense. The fact that Miami won situationally against this team, I think, is very telling. When I look at the national championship odds after the first weekend of college football, 25-1 on Miami. With the quarterback play, it looks like Carson Beck has been unlocked. I thought the skill position players looked good enough to trust in terms of consistently moving the ball down the field and creating explosive plays. The offensive line is going to be one of the best factors of this team. And I thought defensively as well, they got this guy Bain coming off of the edge. Great last name, by the way, for a defensive player. They can get after the quarterback. They can block in the run game. And they have an experienced quarterback who looks more comfortable than I've ever seen him. Miami at 25-1, I think, is the bet that I am going to make, the biggest overreaction that I have from the first week of the college football season. That does it for this week's episode. Be back at it next week for more great sports betting fantasy content. Week 1 of the NFL season is coming up. If you are in the market for a place to watch the Thursday night game, Eagles versus Cowboys, I'll be out at the Hourglass location in Longwood. Would love to see you out there. I'm going to head there right after we go off the air with Game On at 6 o'clock, and we'll hang out through the night for the first NFL game of the season. Hopefully, if you're in our Zoneheads Fantasy League, you come out. It'd be great for us to rack up points together for that very first game. Make sure you visit zoneheadsmedia.com. Keep up with everything that I've got going on. And, of course, a special thanks to the sponsor, Kevin Crager. We'll chat soon, Zoneheads.